Radiant and Resilient is about mindset and faith to break paradigms and overcome challenges in our life. Because when the mind, body, and spirit are aligned, we literally radiate from the inside out. I'm Kay Vasquez. Let's dive in. This incredible, beautiful soul that I am diving deep in with today is a certified physician assistant who left Western medicine to pursue functional medicine and start her own health coaching business, which is online and has been so successful. And it's crazy because I think I met her a few years ago when I started my own functional medicine journey, and just watching her grow has just been such a beautiful gift for me. I'm just so inspired by her authenticity. So if you haven't yet, I highly recommend check out her Instagram after you listen to this episode, because just the images and the graphics she uses, it's like they're so unique and it's so her, but also just I have been inspired by her passion just to really help women heal from the inside out. And I've also been inspired by her own healing journey of healing the mind, body, and spirit. So it is my honor and pleasure to welcome you to Radiant and Resilient, Shae Leonard.
Thank you. Hi. So excited to be here.
Yeah, like I said, you've been such a beautiful inspiration, because we've been in a couple masterminds together. And I think that was when we were both starting on our journey, and just really watching you just grow and evolve, and how you just show up and serve women, helping them to heal has just been so incredible. But yeah, you've been on your own journey because, you were in Western medicine. And what area were you in initially?
I did allergy and immunology first, and then I spent the bulk of my time as a PA in psychiatry.
Yeah, so you're really focused on helping people with mental health, but then you realize that, okay, you're just prescribing medications and actually not helping people heal. You share on your Instagram your aha moment of like this realization that I'm not actually really helping people to heal. So can you share a little bit about that and your own journey? Because you also experienced anxiety and your own health issues as well.
Yes. So I would say that's where I kind of had this big aha moment. It was probably like 10 or 15 years in the making. And looking back, I didn't, understand where, the path where God was leading me. And now, I can see that full circle, which is exciting. But I just started having really, rough health issues from a young age. We work with a lot of autoimmune clients, and it's the same story. Allergies when we were little, food allergies when we were little, lots of ear infections, so tons of antibiotics before the age of 6 months, and then that turned into kind of anxiety from an early age. Then, of course, menstruation happened, and then now we've got terrible periods and acne and gut issues. And back then, unfortunately, still today, oftentimes, it was antibiotics and birth control, given at a very young age, 14 years old, to manage these symptoms. And that's where things, were already headed in a bad direction, but that's where things really started worsening. And I grew up in that mid 90s era, and we ate a lot of crappy food, to be honest. And I was covered in Bath and Body Works glitter every day. And Juicy Couture fragrance and all of these things that now looking back is so obvious. But back then, I had seen specialist after specialist. And, I was never asked about my nutrition. I was never asked about toxic burden. No one ever asked me about my gut. And I was in like severe gut pain daily. And, covered in cystic acne, like, hello, inflammation, looking back, it was so obvious. And so I really struggled with that and saw tons of people. I was having seizures on my menstrual cycle. I mean, it got bad. I was on epilepsy medication, seeing neurologists, this whole thing. And I was told over and over and over, it has nothing to do with your hormones. It has nothing to do with anything. And, they were only on my menstrual cycle. So, I was like, what? And so, just really struggled daily for 10, 15 years. And early on, I always wanted to be a doctor. My aunt's a physician. And so I was like, I want to do health and medicine. And back then I really was passionate about it because I felt like I was still struggling. And so I was like kind of seeking answers for myself. And so I went to PA school, felt horrible all through PA school, felt terrible. Don't know how I made it through. And then, my first job, I worked in allergy and immunology in a pediatric office. And I got sicker there than I ever have in my whole life. I mean, of course, picked up everything was miserable, crying every day, so fatigued, brain fog. And that's when I was like crying in the car on the way home many days. Like, how am I supposed to help people? I can't help myself. I can't
Yeah.
even think straight most
Yeah.
days. I can't even show up. I hide in the bathroom
Mhm.
just because I'm in pain or I feel terrible. And so I knew that wasn't working for me. And so I was, of course, in the conventional approach in my mind was like, I'm just around too many sick people. So that was my initial reason to go into psychiatry.
Mhm.
Was my body can't handle being around sick people. Like, my
Mhm.
body doesn't react well to that. I still didn't know. I still did not know. I still had been trained in a conventional approach. And so anyway, psychiatry was better. I mean, I definitely didn't get, norovirus every month, but I started working in psychiatry, and it was a conventional setting, but I was blessed to work with a doctor who practiced some Eastern medicine. We did herbs with patients, and we did
Amazing.
genetic testing. And sure, I wrote, I can't even tell you, thousands and thousands of prescriptions, but that was my first taste. And I got connected with a functional medicine pharmacist, and that was my aha moment, I would say, because I was still struggling: seizures, gut issues, cystic acne, brain fog, panic attacks, anxiety. I refused to drive because I would have panic attacks. My husband took me everywhere. So it was bad. I mean, it was pretty bad. And I saw her, and truly, my husband went with me. Within the first 5 minutes, I felt seen and heard, for the first time ever, ever. I had hope again for the first time ever. Um, she asked me questions I'd never been asked. Simple questions like, what do you eat? Do you go to the bathroom every day? How do you rest? What are your thought patterns? These things that no one's ever asked me before. And so I walked out of there feeling hope for the first time, feeling seen, feeling heard. I knew she was my person. And she put me on a functional medicine simple protocol when I look back at it. And I truly felt better in 2 weeks. I mean, without a doubt, was practically a different person. Brain fog gone, anxiety better, skin feeling better. I didn't have stomach pain for the first time in 2 weeks, in those 2 weeks. And we continued on that journey for about 6 months. But she is the one who really pushed me, because I started trying to talk about it in the conventional setting with my patients. I started trying to ask them stuff because I'm starting learning. And so now I got people who've been seeing me for 5 years, and I just give them their medication and go on about our way. Now I'm like, what are you eating? How's your bowel movements? And they're probably like, just give me my medicine. But I realized I couldn't talk about anything else, because it had changed my life. And she looked at me and she said, Shae, I don't know what you want to do, but I know what you need to do. And I know that this is your passion. God has orchestrated this and your journey. And I don't know, like, how you couldn't go all in on this. And I didn't know what that looked like. And that was my aha moment. And I said, oh my gosh, yes, I can't not do this or talk about this, because um, when it changes your life that much, there's just nothing else you can talk about.
Right.
There's nothing else you can do. And
Yeah.
yeah, I went back to functional medicine school, started Shae Leonard Wellness, and here we are.
Amazing. Thank you so much. As you're sharing your story, not only were we both PAs, but I also felt the same in Western medicine. We get
Yeah.
into medicine to help people heal, to feel better, yet we're not feeling better ourselves. And we're realizing we're not actually helping people feel better either. I too had
Right.
the brain fog and the fatigue and the anxiety and the gut issues. I also had acne, so I was on birth control for that. Thankfully, didn't have the seizures, but it's wild how everything's just all connected and integrated, which is what they don't teach us in Western medicine. And so it's like jumping
Yeah.
into functional medicine, your eyes are opened to a different way of healing. And I think it's so key, because what you shared is just like finding someone who actually gave you hope for the first time. So if you're listening right now and you're in the similar place where you're feeling the same way, going from doctor to doctor to doctor, looking at different alternative therapies and finding someone who's actually going to listen to you and give you that hope that there is another way, that you can heal, is key, because then that just like really shifted everything for you. It's a challenge that we go through, in our life. And that's something that I've come to realize and recognize. I had my own health challenges too, but that I felt like God was leading me on that path too, to jump into functional medicine and to look at healing from a different perspective and to help people in a different way. And I'm grateful because I would have never gone on that path had I not experienced those things physically in my life. So, that is some something that I like to reflect back on, is like these challenges that we have sometimes is the catalyst for our next evolution, our next growth, our next step in this journey, and the purpose that God has for us. And we could either just be a victim to and be like, because I remember asking like, why? Because I had migraines too, and I'm like, why do I have migraines? Because I was the only one in my immediate family. Why do I have migraines? Like, why me? Why do I have to feel this way? Because they're terrible, suffering. And I remember at some point, even just a couple years ago, as a functional medicine practitioner, because it still wasn't getting better with all the protocols and the changes, God was like, instead of asking why and resisting the migraine, they're here to teach you something. And I was like, oh. So what I'm curious about, Shae, is, how did these challenges shift your mindset and help cultivate that faith and that belief that this is the path that you're meant to be on, that this is the direction you're supposed to go? Like, what are some of those mindset shifts that you had to take on?
Yeah, I think this is a huge, huge proponent of my personal healing, and it's so key. And that's why, I mean, any client I work with, whether they buy an online course from me or work with me privately, we spend so much time on mindset because it's
Yes.
because of my personal experience with it. Like, I knew I wasn't going to get better until I had that switch. And for me, very much the same. I constantly, when I was younger, asked that, and really struggled with that, especially in high school, because I couldn't drive. I was having seizures,
Mm.
in high school, like, that's a big deal. And it was
Yeah.
just, I wore, foundation on my back to prom because I was covered in back acne. And yeah, it was hard, and,
Mhm.
so I kind of really struggled with that, with God for sure, saying, just, yeah, why me? Or, I don't understand, we're doing, we thought we were doing all the things we needed to do to help. We were just really missing the big picture. I knew I had a calling to do health. I was a fashion major before I
No
switched
way.
to pre-med. Yeah, I wanted to do art and fashion merchandising, and that was a very big God moment for me. I remember my freshman year of college feeling very called to do health and healthcare. And I had liked that in the past. So that's when I switched to pre-med, and everything. He was leading me down this path. He was leading me down this journey. And I never honestly thought I would be able to look back and have gratitude for
Mm.
that journey. And, same, that was just, 4 or 5, 6 years ago, not that long ago, where I was able to be like, you know what, I don't understand all of your ways, but I am grateful, because I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have worked with the women I've worked with,
Mm.
if I hadn't gone through that journey, and to trust you, basically, to
Yes.
say, trust, because as you know, and as a lot of my clients, when you're going through that, you also struggle with control. You really want to do everything you can to control
Yeah.
everything, so that you don't feel bad, or it's a very controlling type situation. And God was very clear for me, like, you don't have to do this. Let me do this.
Mm.
And I had to really give that to him, and that's something I still have to do with business and everything else.
Exactly.
But my practitioner that I saw, again, love her, bless her, thankful for her. She's the first person who taught me about mindset. I was
Mm.
on my healing journey. I was doing a lot better. And she caught on to just the way I was speaking in our session. And again, this is such the
Mm.
importance of having an intuitive practitioner. And she stopped me and she said, Shae, you are never going to be free of anxiety. And I was
Mm.
like, whoa, and she goes, until you stop telling yourself that you have it every single day.
Ooh.
I'm like,
Yeah.
ooh, okay. Um, and that was like a big hit for me, because I had known that. I hadn't understood that connection, that our body follows our mind, and that our
Yeah.
thoughts and our thinking patterns create epigenetic influence, hormonal changes, biochemical changes in real time.
Yeah.
And I had been sick for a long time and I had conditioned my thought patterns around that. It was definitely a part of my identity. I didn't want to be sick. And I think there's a big, that's clear. I didn't want to be, but I had affirmed it for so long and I had been told for so long, you're going to always have this, you're going to always deal with this. And so that was the narrative.
Mhm.
That was the story I told myself for years. And I spent, gosh, it was probably like 3 months, I would say, which in hindsight, it's not very long, thank goodness, just solely focusing on rewiring my thought patterns, solely focusing on rewiring the fears that I had developed about driving, for instance, or, going out to eat or whatever. I started changing the narrative. I am healing. I have energy. I am not anxious. I am resilient. I am strong. My body is strong. Just changing those affirmations, reciting, rehearsing them, sitting with them, being grateful for, and that was still a little bit in my healing journey. Like things were still a little, ebb and flowy. But that was the moment that I realized mindset was huge. And then I dove into neuroscience and neuroplasticity, and it fit hand in hand with my background in psychiatry. And I realized like we can't talk about one without talking about the other. And so that's where everything from then on was largely focused on mindset because of how critical that was and still is today for me, and especially working with my clients. Because we have to learn, and it's a skill. I mean, I didn't know that either. It's a skill. We need tools. It takes you might have to rewire a thought pattern 100 times a day
Yeah.
for a while. But it will click. It will rewire actual brain architecture. Well, we have the ability, to have that neuroplasticity where we can rewire this, and get out of that conditioned trauma response. But it takes tools and resources and a lot of consistency. And but after 3 months of doing that every day, spending the time working through that, I was actually reading the book Switch on Your Brain by Dr. Caroline Leaf. And that was where I kind of had started my brain rewiring journey. And it changed everything for me even more so. That was a big catalyst for furthering my healing and actually building resiliency, I would say. Because, of course, my health and how I feel every day change, especially postpartum and everything else. But I've built resiliency because largely I take care of my body, but because I always remember my mindset is key. And it gets me sometimes. Of course it does. But I am self-aware enough to pick up on it very quickly so that I'm able to move through it faster than I used to, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my goodness. Thank you for sharing that because there's so many pieces I wanted to speak to, but the main takeaway is recognizing the thoughts and how it was programming you, conditioning you, and affecting you physically in your body. Because when you weren't aware that when you said I have anxiety, it's your body, your cells are responding to that. You're going to feel anxious if you say I have anxiety, and we think that it becomes our identity, that's who we are, but in reality no, it's what we're experiencing. If we can actually get to the root, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, to see, okay, where is this anxiety coming from? And so recognizing that it's patterns, it's beliefs, it's things that we've taken on that we're not aware of, but once we have that awareness, then we can start to take the steps to change that. But I love how you said it doesn't happen overnight. It does take time, it takes practice, because it's just been ingrained in us for so long. It's like thinking about a habit that you developed. Once you start riding your bike for the first time, for example, you're not going to know how to ride the bike. You're not going to hop on and be a pro at it. No, it takes several attempts of getting on and falling off, getting on and falling off. You don't even think about riding the bike anymore. You're not thinking about, pedaling and shifting the gears and things like that. It just happens automatically. You just focus on where you're going. Same thing when it comes to rewiring our beliefs and the patterns and how we show up and how we respond to our environment exactly the same way. So thank you for sharing that, because a lot of times it's like we want to change and we want things to change like that. But the inner work doesn't happen like that. And the long-term changes don't happen instantaneously. It does require some energy and effort, but it does get to be easy, especially the more we do it. So I love that you brought those pieces up because it's so key, it's so important. But really speaking to the anxiety piece, knowing what you know now, what is anxiety?
Yeah. So good question. I'm doing an anxiety masterclass in a couple of weeks on this
Okay.
exact topic. Yeah, because it's so in depth. It's so multifactorial, and I do feel anxiety is a signal of imbalance. It's a sign from the body that something is off, a sign from the mind that something is off. And you touched on this earlier that I 1000% believe it. For most people, it's a combination of mental, emotional, and physical. Sometimes it could be just one or the other, but oftentimes it's a combination, or the physical leads to the mental, emotional, and vice versa. The mental, emotional creates the physical imbalances. So it really goes hand in hand together. And then we start affirming that dynamic. And then now our mindset plays a huge role in it. So our mind can recreate these imbalances, even when the physical imbalances have already been addressed. We can actually, like you said, say it over and over and think it until it actually is recreated. So that mindset piece is key too. So when we're looking at anxiety, kind of like what is going on, I do think it varies from person to person. We might have the mental, emotional, the trauma, the stress, the toxic burden. We might have a histamine bacteria overgrowth in the gut. I've had clients with just candida, and that's created their anxiety. And we see nutritional deficiencies, B6 deficiencies, magnesium deficiency, nervous system dysregulation. All of these things can create a symptom of anxiety. Side effects of medications, including things like antidepressants, what are used for anxiety, can create anxiety symptoms. So, and then of course the standard American diet. I think one of the key things that's what I was raised on for sure, is understanding mood symptoms are almost inevitable if you are inflamed, toxic, stressed, and malnourished. I mean, I think that's downstream inevitable. And we're seeing
Yes.
such a huge rise in diabetes and obesity and these chronic health conditions, but we're also seeing a rise in mental health issues as well. And there's a lot of things that can contribute to that. But I think one of the biggest things that gets missed oftentimes is that our cells, our body, our hormones, we have to have adequate nutrition, optimal nutrition, to create helpful neurotransmitters, to help create resiliency in the body and the mind, to have good mood and energy. And I think that gets missed oftentimes as well, that I see it as an inevitable downstream effect on just living the standard American way that we do, that inevitably leads to mood related symptoms for sure.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that because it is always multifactorial. There's so many different components that are contributing to that. And that's where, yeah, working with a functional medicine practitioner like yourself can take a bigger picture, take a look at what's really going on and be able to pinpoint the things because it's going to be so different with everybody. Like you mentioned, the one client with candida. And just clearing that out can make a huge difference. And I've seen that too with working with clients, like, the anxiety showed up in different ways, physically, mentally, emotionally. So yeah, working with someone to really get to the root and personalize it because it's going to be so different. If anything, that's what we both have learned. What makes the difference between Western and functional medicine. So I actually do want to touch upon one thing because one thing that we were talking about and sharing before we hopped on this episode is about like pregnancy and postpartum. So even though we've done a lot of work mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, Shae recently last year was pregnant and then gave birth to a beautiful girl and just has gone through her postpartum period. I'm about to give birth in the summer this year. And we were both sharing how like so much came up for us mentally, emotionally in our first trimester. And then a little bit has come up for you in your postpartum where we're like, why didn't anyone tell us about this? And I think this is important because as functional medicine practitioners, as high achievers, we think like, okay, we got this, right? But we're still navigating our own challenges. Stuff is still coming up. We're human at the end of the day. And like you said, back to what you said earlier, it's like, but we have the tools. We can navigate these things a lot quicker than we did before. But I'd love for you to just really briefly, share what that experience was like in the first trimester and postpartum. What were some of the things that were coming up for you that you had to navigate?
Yeah. So I would say first trimester, it's one of those things, my husband and I had had a miscarriage several months before that. And so that alone was interesting because obviously I would say very, very difficult time for me, very heavily relied on God, obviously, and trusted him through that.
Yes.
But, it was a lot of cathartic crying and prayers in the shower for quite some time, trying to process that. And I had been in optimal health, and that's
Yeah.
where it was hard for me because I was very like, how do I fix this? What did I do wrong? I've done all the things. I felt good before. I've had ovulation every month. I've been doing the test strips. Like, what is the issue here? And I had to realize, like, just trust, just trust me, let it go. And that was like a big learning opportunity for me again, to just let go of that control and just breathe and trust, because again, nervous system dysregulation and stress is definitely not helpful. And so I had to really let go of that. So I would say my kind of journey started from that point. And then, we were lucky and blessed enough to get pregnant a few months later. And so you're like so thankful. Of course, you're so grateful. But man, it hit me pretty hard. I was in pretty good health. I'm blessed again because I speak with a lot of women. I never had the nausea, the vomiting. I never had that. I'm so thankful. But man, there were days I didn't get off the couch. Like, legitimately did not get off the couch. I was so exhausted. And it was like a wave of fatigue. I mean, like fatigue that I used to experience when I was very, very sick. So that was hard. I stopped a lot of things. My business definitely took a back seat. A lot of things took a back seat so that my body could make a baby and make a little human. And the woman's body is so crazy, amazing, and miraculous and powerful. And so my first trimester, because of my high achieving type personality, again, it was a practice in letting go. It was a practice in being in the moment and saying I can't do all the things and I don't need to do all the things, because actually I am. I'm doing something that is more important to me in my life than anything else ever could be. And again, God was trying to teach me something in those moments of, fatigue, sitting on the couch, not working on my business, not doing anything, and then just sitting in gratitude and realizing, like, I'm making a baby and this is so exciting, and I'm just going to enjoy this moment and rest. And our bodies will force us to rest. And I feel like that's what it was doing. I think it was, my body, and little Scotty was saying, you need to rest, mama, let's just rest. And that was what my first trimester was about. And it was exactly what we talked about. It was a struggle early on. Like, why is this? What am I doing wrong? Is this normal? I feel so terrible all the time. To just be and just embrace it and just sit in that gratitude. And I didn't do that overnight. It took me a minute to get there and realize, just exactly what my body was doing and needed to do. And then, second trimester came and I was like, yeah, things are looking up. But yeah, I started feeling quite a bit better. And then third trimester, man, I mean, you can't hardly walk. Like, I was over 41 weeks, and, waking up all the time and crazy amounts of constipation that I never thought I'd deal with again in my life. And, kind of working to do that. But, I think that overall I really liked being pregnant. I did. I was one of those people that I enjoyed it. I felt rough sometimes, but I thought it was a very, very special time. And I really, really enjoyed that. And I had a crazy birth story that can be a whole topic on its own. But postpartum for me, I mean, gosh, that first month is a little rough for sure. I mean, we wanted to be able to breastfeed, and we were blessed to be able to do that. And so, I mean, it's every 2 hours through the night, and you're breastfeeding. And looking back, it seems like it seems like it took months, and really it was like 6 weeks. It's like 6 weeks of like, holy smokes. And honestly, just 3 weeks, the first 3 weeks. And it's all because you don't know. It feels like it's forever. But if you knew the timeline, like, just get through this next 6 weeks, you'll be good. But you just feel like it's never going to end, but it does. It gets so much better. And I would say right now, she's 5 months, almost 6 months old. I just love it. I mean, it is so So special. I can just get emotional and teary thinking about it. I've only gone through several different stages with her, only 6 months, but this is my favorite stage so far. We're loving it.
Amazing. What keeps coming up like in your health journey and in pregnancy and postpartum is just trust and surrender.
Yeah.
And that was definitely some lessons and themes that I learned on my journey as well, in my health journey, and also getting pregnant, because it's so easy to get in that mindset as a high achiever to just go, 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 push, push, push. But I believe the same thing. When we listen and tune to our body, God's also like reminding us it's okay to slow down. We don't have to keep going. We don't have to push. We're going to go through seasons in life where we're meant to slow down. And yes, we're making an incredible human being. Our bodies are incredible, and allowing our bodies to do that. I had to give myself a lot of grace in the first trimester too, to be okay with slowing down. Because my body's doing something incredible. I'm like co-creating a life with God. I'm just giving it the nutrients and God's doing the rest, right? And so,
exactly.
And so, these moments, these seasons, when our body, sometimes we're not feeling our best, it's always good to slow down and tune inward and surrender to God, because God is just revealing us beautiful lessons in those moments, and so much can come out of it, and there's just so much beauty. And we don't stop to just be present enough. And that's another thing. It's like, because I've talked to other pregnant female entrepreneurs as well, and someone were like, I didn't even get to enjoy my pregnancy. And I was like, oh wow. So at least I'm grateful I'm able to slow down and just be fully present and just have gratitude for the health of my body and what I'm creating. And we don't do that enough, I feel like, as women, because we just are constantly trying to achieve and do more and be more. But we can't always be on go mode. We sometimes have to slow down and just really take care of ourselves so we can take care of the other people in our life as well. So thank you for sharing that again, Shae. It's just so incredible just to hear your story and your journey. And one last question to really wrap things up. I'm curious, what does radiant and resilient mean to you?
I love the name of this podcast because the resiliency piece is so key. I use that word probably, I don't know. My clients have probably heard me say that so often, because that is what it's about: mental, emotional, spiritual, physical resiliency. And for me, what that means, I have to show up for myself every day. And it doesn't happen every day, not always. Like I said, I'm always quicker to get there. But I'm not perfect by any means every day. And what created radiance and resiliency for me, I think, truly started on a mental, emotional, spiritual level. And I still believe that solely. If you show up for God every day, you make Him your priority every single morning, for me, and throughout the day, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, that creates radiant resiliency personally for me, because I know that that connection leads me to be the best wife, the best mom. It also reminds me to nourish myself and to take care of my body and take care of myself physically. But if I don't take care of my body, I feel it quickly. So it's pretty easy for me to eat well, nourish myself, get good sleep. I can make those things a priority because I don't have time to not feel well. So that comes pretty easy for me. It didn't always. I've been very consistent habit wise. But what doesn't always come easy for me is the surrender, is to sit in gratitude. And so I have to create habits in my life, like spending time with God every morning, in order to make sure I can maintain this long term, because I had to realize it's not me doing all of these things. I can't do it all. It's me surrendering and allowing God to do His job and what He wants for me, and to just give Him that glory and focus as much as I can. And if I can do that consistently daily, I know the other pieces of the puzzle will fall into place. And I would say right now, especially because I feel very distracted, that's the biggest thing I'm trying to honestly get back to making my number one priority, because I know and understand, in order for me to be the best mom in all these other areas, I have to get back to that. And life happens. Like I said, it gets crazy, and you realize, like, oh, remember when I used to sit outside for an hour and pray with God? What happened to that? oh, Spotty woke up at 4 a.m. and I barely got through, and it's like, whoa, okay. But don't forget the needs that you have in that moment and your priority in that moment and the blessings that are all from him, and to spend that time together with God, your husband, everything, because life happens and it does get crazy. And so for me, even in this season, that's even what has been on my heart. And I know God's like, you got to get back with me. You got to stay with me every day. It's so, so important. So that's what it means for me.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that and just your honesty too, because it's like, yeah, the health stuff, taking care of me, making sure I feel good, that's easy, but the surrendering, still working on that. And I have to admit, I'm working on that piece too. It's not as easy because it goes back to that control piece, right? Surrendering is letting go of control, which again is a conditioning. Needing to control is that it's just that conditioning. So, but the more we do it, the more we allow ourselves to just spend that time with God, it's easier to surrender in those moments. And I found that whatever I'm experiencing that I need to surrender, once I surrender, it's just like such a weight that's lifted off of me, because you're right. We're not here to do it all. And God is here to do a lot for us if we allow him to, but we can't allow him to do that until we surrender. So I love that you shared that, because that is such a huge, huge piece, I think, that anyone can take away listening to our conversation today. It's like, if you want to heal mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, sometimes it's that surrender that we have to do, and just really turning to God. So, so thank you for that. And also share where can people find you, where they can work with you, where they can learn more.
I'm back from postpartum. I am taking private clients again. I work specifically with women on getting to the root cause of mood, gut, and hormone symptoms. And I'm mostly on Instagram at Shae Leonard. I'm at TikTok at Shae Ann Leonard. My website's www.shaeleonard.com. If you have any questions for me, honestly, the best way to get a hold of me is to message me on Instagram, and I personally respond to those. I personally voice message you and figure out what you have going on. And I always tell people, when you find your person, because that was my experience. When I found my person, I knew she was my person. I felt it in my bones. And that's what I wish and always hope for anyone who comes into my ecosystem or my world. Like, hey, I'm going to know if I love you and care for you, but I want you to feel that. And if I'm not, that's okay. I really just want you to know, and you will. I always tell people, like, you're going to know if I'm your person, and if I'm not your person, that's okay. I'm praying for healing for you and whatever the capacity that looks like. But I would love to chat with you anytime. So that's it.
Perfect. You know where to find her. I'll put the link in the show notes. And other than that, thank you again, Shae, for your time, your insights, your wisdom, your knowledge that you poured into those that are listening today. I'm so grateful for you and for your friendship. And thank you again.
Thank you.